You know what's funny about power? The ones who have it think they'll always keep it. And the ones who lose it never see it slipping away until it's gone. That's the truth of history over and over again. And right now, the biggest stage of power isn't about who's got the biggest military, who's printing the most money, or who's got the loudest voice. It's about who's building silently while the rest of the world argues. And in that game, there's one nation that's been moving with purpose. India. And you better believe me when I say this, America's biggest geopolitical mistake wasn't its wars, wasn't its alliances, wasn't even its sanctions. It was underestimating India. See, for decades, America played chess with the world like it was the only one who knew the rules. It moved its pawns, made its plays, and believed every country had to pick a side. You were either with them or against them. But India didn't play that game. India chose a third path, a path that didn't need validation from Washington or permission from Brussels. A path built on quiet resilience on thousands of years of history and on a culture that outlasted every empire that ever tried to control it. Now, when you look back, you can see the pattern. America saw India as a secondary power, too democratic to be rebellious, too poor to be dangerous, and too peaceful to be influential. But what they didn't see was the shift. While America was busy fighting wars in the Middle East and losing manufacturing to China, India was fighting a different kind of battle. The war of innovation, technology, and human capital. Every Indian engineer, coder, scientist that went abroad wasn't just an individual success story. They were ambassadors of a nation quietly preparing for greatness. While America saw them as workers to fill Silicon Valley's needs, India saw them as seeds that would one day grow into a global network of influence. America underestimated that. They thought India would always play back up, always follow instructions, always align itself with Western agendas. But India had a bigger plan. When America tried to define power by dominance, India redefined it through the myth of underestimating quiet nations' balance. When America measured success by control, India measured it by connection. See, you can't control the future by intimidation anymore, not in a world that's tired of fear. You can only lead by inspiration, by unity, by showing that your rise doesn't mean someone else's fall, and that's what India understood long before anyone else did. You look at America's strategy today, it's all reaction. Reaction to China, reaction to Russia, reaction to the Middle East. But India is playing long term. It's not reacting, it's positioning. It's not shouting, it's listening. It's not chasing headlines, it's building foundations. That's the difference between power built on noise and power built on purpose. America used to be the dream destination, the land of opportunity. But now that dream is competition. Indian cities are becoming global innovation hubs. Indian universities are producing top-tier minds who stay home to build instead of leaving to serve. Indian startups are breaking barriers that used to belong to Silicon Valley. And here's the part that hurts America the most. India is doing it without trying to copy anyone. They're doing it their own way. When America looked at India, it saw a developing country. What it didn't see was a developing superpower. What it didn't understand was that India's strength wasn't in its GDP numbers, but in its mindset. You can't measure spirit in spreadsheets. You can't quantify 1.4 billion people who've learned to adapt, survive, and rise through every storm. You can't predict what happens when a nation that's been overlooked for centuries suddenly decides it's done waiting for permission. America's greatest mistake was assuming that India's rise would always depend on Western approval. But India never needed anyone's approval. It just needed time. It needed the world to get distracted. And all the world did, while the U.S. got tangled up in endless conflicts, India was laying fiber optic cables, building satellites, developing indigenous defense systems, and crafting trade deals that didn't need an American handshake to be legitimate. And then it happened, the shift no one could deny. India became the bridge between East and West, North and South, the one country that could talk to Washington, Moscow, and Beijing without being anyone's puppet. That's what power looks like in the modern world. Independence, not intimidation. Influence, not interference. See, America's playbook is old now. It's built on sanctions, on dominance, on control. But the world doesn't move by control anymore. It moves by how India turned adversity into strength cooperation. India mastered that game. While the U.S. was busy building military bases, India was building trust. While America was pushing narratives, India was pushing progress. And the result, nations that used to whisper in Washington's ear now look to New Delhi for perspective. Let's talk facts. America underestimated India's economic potential. It thought India would forever be a service economy, cheap labor, outsourced technology call centers. But now India is not just providing services, it's leading innovation. Its space program is running missions at a fraction of NASA's budget and landing successfully. Its defense industry is creating homegrown missiles, tanks, and aircrafts that can rival Western technology. Its digital economy is connecting villages faster than America's connecting cities. That's not imitation. That's evolution. And let's not forget diplomacy. America believed India would always need its protection, that old colonial mindset of we'll guide you. But India flipped that script. Now countries that look to America for direction are asking India for balance, whether it's the global South, the Briars Alliance, or Indo-Pacific strategy. India has become the moral center of the conversation, not because it wants to dominate, but because it understands both sides of the world. You can't underestimate a nation that's learned how to struggle with dignity. You can't underestimate people who've built empires on hope when the world gave them nothing but hardship. And yet America did. It saw India's patience as weakness. But patience is never weakness, it's wisdom. Because when you've waited this long, you don't rise just to make noise, you rise to make history. Now, let's be honest, America is still powerful, it's still influential, but it's losing something far more valuable, credibility. And that's something India is gaining every single day. You see, power without respect is temporary, but respect built through consistency that lasts generations. And that's what's happening right now. Look around. The U.S. is struggling to hold its allies together. Europe's divided. The Middle East is volatile. And China's unpredictable. But India, it's stable, growing confident. It's not picking fights. It's picking futures. That's what makes America nervous, because you can't compete with someone who doesn't play your game. America's strategy for years was built around fear, fear of losing influence, fear of rising competitors. But India's strategy is built around purpose. That's why it resonates with nations tired of being told what to do. When America says, follow us, India says, walk with us, that's a different kind of leadership, one built on mutual respect instead of dominance. And the beauty of it, India didn't need to overthrow anyone or rise. It didn't invade. It didn't impose. It didn't dictate, just built. It built education, the new power structure of Asia, technology, democracy, resilience. It built bridges, not borders. And that's what makes this rise unstoppable. Because you can't sanction integrity, you can't embargo spirit, and you can't invade unity. America forgot that influence isn't about control. It's about example. For years, it told the world what freedom should look like. But India showed the world what freedom can build. A nation of a billion voices still united. A democracy that thrives amidst diversity. A civilization that balances faith and future in the same breath. That's not just political power. That's human power. Now the tables are turning. American companies are coming to India not out of charity, but out of necessity. Western investors are realizing that India is not the market of tomorrow. It's the market of today. And every time an American CEO shakes hands with an Indian entrepreneur, it's a silent admission. Who underestimated you or America's geopolitical mistake wasn't just underestimating India's capability. It was underestimating its character, the resilience, the self-belief, the moral ground, and that keeps India from becoming what it fights against. While superpowers use propaganda to control narratives, India used progress to write its own. And don't think the rest of the world hasn't noticed. Nations once pressured by U.S. influence are now finding their own voice through India's example. They see that you don't have to bow to survive. You can rise through balance, through dignity, through strategy. India is teaching the developing world how to stand tall without picking sides. The mistake America made is the same mistake every empire makes before it falls. It confused dominance with destiny. It thought the world needed it more than it needed the world. But now the balance is shifting. Power is no longer about who controls oil, money, or weapons. It's about who controls the narrative of progress. And India owns that story now. What America didn't realize is that India was never chasing the same dream. India wasn't trying to be the next America. It was trying to be the first India. That's the difference. It's not about imitation. It's about identity. And once a nation finds its true identity, no amount of geopolitical pressure can stop it. Look at the partnerships India is forming with Japan, with France, with the Middle East, with Africa. It's weaving a new web of alliances that don't depend on old powers. It's creating a world where cooperation replaces coercion. That's how you change the game, not with threats, but with trust. When America underestimated India, it underestimated humanity's hunger for dignity. It forgot that nations don't rise because of what others give them. They rise because of what they refuse to give up. And India refused to give up its independence, its culture, its values. It didn't trade them for influence. It built influence through them. Every great power in history has faced a moment when it realizes the world doesn't revolve, why America missed the signs around it anymore. For America, that moment is now, and the mirror it fears most isn't in Moscow or Beijing. It's in New Delhi, because India's rise exposes something deeper. That power built on fear can never outlast power built on faith. You see, when a nation believes in its destiny, no alliance can control it, no threat can shake it. That's where India stands today, not in anyone's shadow, but in its own light. The world can't ignore that anymore. The old order is trembling, not because India demanded it, but because India earned it. America's biggest geopolitical mistake wasn't failing to predict India's rise. It was failing to respect it. because you can't stop a nation that grows not from anger, but from purpose. And you can't compete with the people who've learned that the strongest power in the world isn't the one that conquers others, but the one that conquers itself. You don't lose global leadership overnight. You lose it the moment you underestimate those who build quietly. That's how empires fall, not with explosions or revolutions, but with ignorance. When a nation begins to believe that its throne is permanent, that its influence is unshakable, that's when the cracks start to form. And America, for all its glory, all its power, all its might, made that mistake with India. It saw a nation of dreamers, workers, and believers, but it didn't see a nation of builders. It saw a market, not a movement. It saw a population, not potential. And by the time it realized what was happening, the ground beneath it had already started to shift. The truth is, leadership isn't taken. It's transferred quietly, gradually, to the ones who deserve it. The world doesn't follow the loudest voice anymore. It follows the one that delivers. And while America was shouting about democracy, India was demonstrating it. While Washington was drawing red lines, New Delhi was building bridges, America was trying to hold on to influence by force. But India was earning it through respect. That's the kind of power you can't buy, can't bully, can't bomb your way into. It's the kind of power that comes from proving yourself when no one's watching. See, India doesn't rise with noise. It rises with patience, with purpose, with persistence. It doesn't announce every step. It just takes them one after another until the world wakes up and realizes the game has changed. And that's exactly what's happening. America spent years believing leadership meant control. But India is showing that leadership means contribution. You don't dominate the world by owning it. You lead it by inspiring it. When America looked at India, it saw chaos, crowded streets, noisy markets, political debates. What it didn't see was coordination. It didn't see how that chaos was the rhythm of democracy, how that noise was the heartbeat of progress. It didn't see how 1 billion people were learning to move in one direction, not through command, but through conviction. And that's where the U.S. miscalculated. It believed global leadership was about power projection. But India was projecting something stronger purpose. You lose global leadership the moment the rise of self-reliant India, you stop listening. And that's what happened to America. It got used to speaking to commanding, to dictating terms. But India listened to its people, to its partners, to the pulse of a changing planet. While America was building military bases, India was building consensus. While Washington was threatening sanctions, New Delhi was signing trade deals. While one nation tried to control the world's direction, the other quietly built its own. And it's not like India was trying to challenge America directly. That's what makes this shift so profound. India's rise isn't a rebellion, it's a realization that in the modern world, power isn't held by those who shout the loudest, but by those who show up consistently. America was too busy guarding the old order to notice that a new one was already being built, one powered by cooperation instead of coercion. Every empire believes it's invincible until the mirror of time humbles it. Rome didn't fall in a day. The British Empire didn't collapse in a year. They fell when they ignored the rise of those who were building quietly beneath them. History doesn't repeat, it whispers. And right now that whisper says America is repeating the same mistake with India. When you underestimate someone who's building quietly, you miss the signs, you miss the innovation, the discipline, the determination. You miss the factories rising, the satellites launching, the universities producing brilliance. You miss the small victories that turn into global turning points. India is not just building roads or railways. It's building reach, building relevance, building respect. America thought leadership was about being everywhere at once. But India understood that true leadership is about being essential. It's not about how many troops you deploy, but how many minds you inspire. It's not about how many countries you control, but how many people trust you. And trust is something you can't enforce. You have to earn it. India earned it through reliability, through stability, through standing firm even when it stood alone. While America's alliances were shaking, India was strengthening its own with Japan, with France, with Russia, with the Middle East. The same regions America used to dominate now see India as a partner, not a pawn. That's what happens when you build quietly. You earn authenticity, and authenticity is the silent revolution in technology and defense new currency of power. America's mistake wasn't arrogance alone, it was assumption. It assumed that the future would always need its permission, that innovation would always flow through its institutions, that democracy would always mean Western ideology. But India shattered that illusion. It showed that democracy could wear a different face, speak a different language, and still thrive. It showed that progress doesn't have to look Western to be legitimate. And here's the deeper truth. America forgot what it once represented. It was once the underdog, the self-made nation that rose through grit, not greed. But somewhere along the way, it became what it used to fight against, a gatekeeper of power instead of a guardian of progress. India, on the other hand, never forgot the struggle. Every achievement it celebrates is built on the foundation of centuries of perseverance. That's why its rise feels so different. It's not about dominance. It's about destiny. You don't lose global leadership overnight. You lose it when you start mistaking loyalty for dependency. America thought its allies needed it forever. But the moment they found options, they found their voice. And who offered those options? India did. Through trade, through diplomacy, through shared development, India gave countries what America never could: respect without condition. The nations of Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, they're not looking for saviors anymore. They're looking for equals. And in India, they see someone who understands both the pain of struggle and the pride of success. America preaches equality but practices hierarchy. India practices equality by listening, by collaborating, by making others part of the vision. That's what real leadership looks like. And the beauty of India's rise is that it didn't need to break the system to win. It just outgrew it. It didn't need to tear down America's influence. It simply made it less relevant. America's power was built on dependence. India's power is built on self-reliance. You can't compete with someone who doesn't need you to survive. Let's be real. America's decline in influence isn't just external. It's internal. It's divided, distracted, and drowning in its own noise. The world sees that. The same how the world now depends on India, a nation that once inspired unity now struggles with it. But India, despite its complexity, still holds together. It debates fiercely but moves forward together. That's strength. That's leadership. The quiet builders are always underestimated because they don't show off. They don't chase headlines. They let their results speak. India has become the master of this. When the world mocked its space program, it reached the moon. When critics doubted its economy, it became one of the fastest growing in the world. When skeptics questioned its democracy, it stood stronger than ever. Quiet progress always makes the loudest impact. America's leadership used to come from inspiration. Now it comes from intimidation, and intimidation only lasts as long as fear does. But India's leadership comes from aspiration, from giving people hope that they can grow without surrendering their soul. That's why it resonates. People don't follow threats, they follow belief. You lose global leadership when your vision becomes self-centered. America started building walls when the world needed bridges. It started protecting its old privileges instead of earning new respect. But India, it's opening doors, building digital highways, connecting hearts and markets alike. It's not just talking globalization, it's living it. The 21st century doesn't reward the loud, it rewards the capable. It doesn't honor the dominant, it honors the dependable. And that's where India wins, because every project, every partnership, every decision is built on reliability. America's reputation today depends on politics. India's depends on performance. It's ironic, isn't it? The nation that once colonized others now fears being left behind by a nation it once ignored. But that's how history works. It doesn't care who was first. It cares who adapts. And India adapted. It turned its challenges into opportunities. It turned its diversity into strength. It turned its silence into strategy. America can still lead, but not the way it used to. Leadership now demands humility, empathy, understanding, and those are qualities India has mastered, because you can't lead the world by telling it what to do anymore. You lead by showing what's possible. You lead by example, and India's example speaks louder than any speech America could give. Every time America underestimated a quiet builder, it paid the price. It underestimated Japan after World War II, underestimated China in the 80s, and now it's underestimating India in the 21st century. The difference is India's rise isn't aggressive. It's inclusive. It's not trying to replace America. It's trying to redefine leadership itself. The truth about global leadership, the next phase of global power, won't be about who dominates markets. It'll be about who connects them. It won't be about who controls media. It'll be about who earns trust, and that's why America's grip is slipping. Because trust can't be enforced. It has to be cultivated. India is doing that through partnership, through compassion, through shared progress. Leadership is lost in moments of arrogance, but is regained through humility. America still has time to see this truth, but it must look beyond its old lens, because the world no longer needs a ruler, it needs a role model. And while America was looking backward to preserve its image, India was looking forward to shape its legacy. The quiet builders are the ones who rewrite the future. They don't ask for recognition. They let time recognize them. They don't demand loyalty. They earn it. They don't chase validation. They create value. And that's exactly what India is doing. It's proven that true power doesn't come from dominance, but from direction. You lose leadership not when others rise, but when you stop rising yourself. America's greatest threat isn't India's growth. It's its own stagnation. Because when you stop evolving, the world moves on. And right now, it's moving eastward toward a nation that builds balances and believes in something bigger than itself. The ones who build quietly will always surprise those who rule loudly, because quiet builders don't seek applause, they seek achievement. They don't plan for headlines, they plan for final message. Never underestimate quiet builders' history. And when history looks back at this era, it won't remember who shouted the loudest, it'll remember who built the strongest. And that's where India stands today, firm, focused, and unshakably ready for the moment the world finally realizes who's been building all along.